Hello Automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm Brian from Automate Your Life, and today I'm going to show you the brand new Google Nest Doorbell. We're going to get it opened up, I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to give you everything you need with this brand new doorbell from Google. I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to get this thing opened right up, and right away I can tell you this is the color that most of you are going to get. This is the snow white color, and I would say right off the bat I'm feeling a lot, or I feel like this is a lot like the Nest camera sitting here, or the designs are very similar. Something else I'm noting right away is look how thin this is and how it's going to sit on your home. I think that this is really a great design. I don't mind the length whatsoever on this doorbell. Might end up with the button pusher a little bit lower than some people would like in some installations, but in general I think that the thinness of this is going to make it fit really well on a lot of homes. The other thing I want to show you right off the bat is just similar construction, and you can see on the Nest camera there's kind of this black plastic, and it's covering a lot of things here because there's a PIR sensor, there's the IR lights along the bottom here, and you can see really a very similar surface here on the Nest doorbell. The other similar thing, again, you can see it easier here. There's a microphone port, and you've seen the LED light coming on. This is a very, very similar thing on the Nest doorbell. It's a little harder to see on this, but that bottom one appears to be the microphone port, and then the LED light should just be just above it, more towards the middle. Something else that I noted right away, I'm sure you can hear that, and hopefully you can see it depressing a little bit here. This is a good feeling button, and you know what, I'm happy for the little click, the little bit of movement here. I don't necessarily like the touch only buttons that I've tried on a couple of the Ring doorbells, for example, and you know, I like having that little bit of tactile feel, but that could become a problem with the device over time. I also don't see any speakers physically on this device, so I'm interested to figure out exactly where those are, but I have a couple of latches in the back. You can see right here, and that may be somewhere that sound is coming out of, and you can see hopefully up here there's another one. Now on the back itself, here's your charging port. It's a USB-C, and then we have the little screws. This is what we're kind of used to tie into a lot of home systems here, or a home existing doorbell. And then there's a QR code here, some other writing, and I don't even know what this is just yet. All right, let's get into the rest of this, see what else we got. I'm gonna get rid of that, and right away I notice a sticker here from Google. I think this is, you know, in a lot of places you now have to let people know that they could be recorded or listened to when they're near your home, and that's actually a warning we kind of saw on this as well. There's also a couple of pamphlets here, and yeah, so this is something that I did see. You know, I was talking about that material on the Nest Cam. They're telling you to try and protect the lens and the area around it as best you can. It's not going to impact it hugely unless you get a scratch, a big scratch on that lens. But the gray area, you know, they're just covering some other components that they need, like the IR lighting. Of course, you're getting a Let's Get Started guide, which really just tells you to install the Google Home application and get it set up there, and then it's showing you what's inside here. You're getting a good high quality USB-C cable. I would say it's the same length of the cable that I got with this, probably 3.3 feet, and I'll put that up on screen now. But you can see it's a regular USB end and a USB-C. Breaking in here, I have some of the mounting hardware, and I think one of these is an angle mount, and that's going to be a little hard to shoot here, but you can see It's a plastic angle mount, and I'll show you in some other shots how this is going to affix to the camera in the end. And then I also have a metal mount here, and I think this is just a straight on component here for the camera. This should just be a couple of screws, a couple of little components for mounting, and then we should be good to get going, if I can ever get it open. Probably not. I should just probably give up and not bother with the video or something here. I got a spoon with a hole in the middle of it. There's a lot of different hardware and components inside of the box, and of course you're going to have those for wherever you're affixing this to. You have those two, and then you have two of the larger screws for getting it into your home, and that's your actual mounting hardware. There's a couple other components that I'm not going to explain until we get into the full setup, but you know, here's a couple of connectors that you have for your existing wiring. We have a couple of these foam little pads here with a sticker. We can remove that off the back there, and that's going to stick to a surface. We have a couple of those, and then we have these smaller screws. These are really tiny. Now that I have everything out of the box, we've had a good look at this, let's get it set up and we're gonna unravel some of the mysteries here. The first thing we're going to need is the Google Home application and to be logged in. Now I already have a Google account that I've logged in, and you can see that I've put a few devices inside of my Google Home application. You might not have any, just go ahead and sign up for a free account. Next is the plus. That's what we're going to hit here, and then we're going to choose Setup Device. Now the next thing you're going to do, you get two choices here. We're not choosing the Works with Google, we're choosing to add a new device. The next thing you have to do is, if you've set up multiple homes like I have inside of the Google Home app under this account, then you've got to pick one, and you can just tap on the side there, make sure the check mark is next to the one you want, and you might have to add one if this is the first time you're setting something up. Now it's looking for the device, and I want you to make sure that you have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi turned on your smartphone or tablet that you're using to set this up. But it didn't find anything. This hasn't even been powered up, and we're going to go to Doorbell. And then we're going to get to pick Nest Doorbell battery, because this actually does have a battery in it and we can use that. Now we're going to scan the QR code, and there's a QR code on the back. You can see that focused very quickly. It was very easy to get done there. And they're saying we're going to set up our new Nest Doorbell battery version. I keep saying battery, but keep in mind you can wire this into an existing system. There is some components here, and they're actually giving us some of those details right now. It's going to work from -20 to +40 Celsius or -4 Fahrenheit to 104 Fahrenheit. Now the power source here, this one now goes between 8 to 24 volts AC, okay? That's quite a big difference from the previous generation, but we're not going to connect that to 110 or 220 volts AC in our mains on our home, okay? It is a weather resistant product, but not weatherproof. Next, we're getting some of the privacy guidelines. This is kind of what I meant with, you know, some of this sticker going on here. Google always asks for anonymous data, so go ahead and choose if you want to provide that. You can hit yes, I'm in, or no thanks if you don't want to help them improve their AI and machine learning, which are big features of this. Next, they'd like us to plug in the doorbell using our USB-C cable. Now, if you don't have a plug-in, you're going to need an adapter here for this. So this is one component that you will need. This is a fairly simple exercise, but once we plug it in, we should get the light to illuminate. Now it's currently white. Now you can see that it turned blue right here, and that means we can go to the next step. So it's connecting to the Nest Doorbell, and again, if you don't have Bluetooth on your phone turned on your phone or your tablet, it won't be able to make that connection. Make sure that's on. The app has found all the different Wi-Fi networks around my home, and I'm going to choose mine. And then I've already put in a password, so it's asking if I want to use the save password. I could enter it manually again if you have it wrong saved or something like that, but go ahead and put in your credentials if you need to. Now it's going to connect to Wi-Fi, and there's always a few restrictions on the type of Wi-Fi that you can have in your home. So if you're running into problems here, there is support at support.google.com. Don't miss out on that. It made a little noise, and now I have to decide where it's going to be. Well, obviously it's going to be in the entryway or on the porch. Maybe you've got something like a room called a porch, like I do. And if you don't, well, you can add a custom room all the way down at the bottom. Now it's downloading a quick update. The next page actually asks you whether you're going to use the battery or the wired install in your home. Now, this page, it kind of reads like, oh, you're definitely going to need an 8 to 24 volt AC transformer that you're going to have to buy. But in a lot of cases, your doorbell should already work, your existing one. That's part of the point of this range that Google has done here. The old Nest Hello was, I believe, 16 to 24 volts AC, and that meant a lot of homes needed that. Now, in order to kind of get to the point where you're ready to tackle putting it wired into your home, you're going to need to actually physically measure the existing doorbell. You have to actually test those wires you have, and there's a compatibility checker that Google has for checking the different wiring types in your home. So for today, I'm going to use the battery version. The next thing you get is an installation video, and you get a different video based on your choice on the previous page. So make sure you're choosing the right one, but there's a lot of good tips in there that I'm going to give you as we go throughout. Let me take you through how I did my physical installation, and I'll give you other details that you might need. Now, I took out my mounting hardware and I just generally surveyed the area, and then I took out my Nest doorbell itself, and I looked at the app as I was checking the angle and where I was about to install it. I was also checking down below to see how those packages would show up. Now, I'm checking the wedge, and I actually decided not to use the wedge in this case. But if you were to use that, I'm going to show you how that goes. So then what I do is I take out a tape measure, and you're wanting to go at 4 feet. So mark a spot at 4 feet just because that's where you want about the middle of your Nest doorbell. Then if you're using the wedge, that's what goes on the wall or on your home first. And there's some specific holes that you're going to use for that. But if you're using the metal mount like I am, then you're going to mark your physical hole locations. Now let me show you how it goes together. This is the wedge, and you see this hole right here. This is the one where you will put the screw through if you're using the wedge. And then you will put these smaller screws between the wedge and the metal mount. So you're going to take these and you're going to put them in this location to hold the two together. Google actually shows this in their video, so you can see them marking specific holes. Now, the other thing you might want to do if you're into maybe a more fancy rock sort of space here, you might want to use those foam pads on the back of either of the two mounts in order to get it a little more even. So here's my metal mount, and this is the hole I'm going to be using for that. It gives you a little play up and down, and this one gives you a little play left to right. So I use that a little bit later in my install. Now I've marked my two locations, and I have a 1/4 inch drill bit. I didn't need a masonry bit, but again, if you're going into rock or something like that, you might need a more substantial bit. Also, a good thing to check is if there's any wires behind this. There shouldn't be, but it's always good to check, and there are meters available that can let you know if there's electrical wire behind a spot where you're about to drill. So I drilled my first hole, and because I'm an engineer, I'm going to check where my two locations are and make sure that they're lining up right and that my metal mount seems generally level. It doesn't have to be perfect just yet because we have the play in those screws. I also checked that those holes were wide enough, and then I drilled my second hole. Once you're done both of those and you're feeling good, now it's time to tap these little components in, and I didn't tap too hard, and I wouldn't suggest that you hit them very hard with any hammer. You can use a rubber mallet as well. Just try not to split them. Now again, you can use those pads if you're finding it a little bit uneven on the back of your mount before you fully screw this in, although you can remove these screws pretty easily. I'm just taking a Phillips screwdriver and I'm screwing in those two screws, and I'm not fully tightening this as of yet because I want to check the alignment of my door. This is me here just actually undoing it a little bit, adjusting it, and then tightening it back up, and now I'm feeling pretty good, and so I drop my screwdriver and then I decide to put on my Nest Doorbell. So when you push down, you should actually hear it click in, and then you'll notice it powers up because it's been attached to the mount. If you are going to try and wire this in, well, you have a chime in your home, and you can see there's actually markings on here that say the transformer's voltage, and you're hoping for a transformer VA rating as well. So check both of those on your chime. Here's mine saying it's a 10 to 16 volt, but it's actually not when I go measure it, which is one of the most important things that I can tell you. You need a proper multimeter. You take the front off of the doorbell here, and the power is still live as I'm doing this. So keep that in mind. Be very careful. Then once you have the doorbell off, get your multimeter and make sure it's on volts AC, and it's got a low enough setting. Mine's set to 200 volt AC as a maximum, and then you're going to put the prongs on those wires, and you can see that I'm within that 8 to 24 volt AC range. This tells me that I'm probably pretty good, but I still don't have a transformer rating. For myself at this point, I would do that physical installation. I would expect most to be within that 10 to 40 VA range. So I'm not really worried at this point, but if you want to go that extra step, get your friendly electrician friend in. In order to get recordings, it needs to be on the mount, and in order to see the feed, it needs to be on the mount. But to take it off, it just takes that little spoon thing that they gave you and a push down on the top of the device. When the camera's on, you're going to see a green light on, and this is whenever it's processing or recording video and sending that to the cloud. If someone's viewing the camera feed, then you'll find the light actually blinking. Next up in the setup process is whether or not you want the video to actually be recorded. You could just want this to be live video, and you may even need that based on local laws. So turn that on or off based on whether you want that. You also probably want to turn on both the microphone and audio recording when you're creating those recordings. I would suggest that generally, and whether or not you want visitor announcements. So it can be announced on Google Assistant enabled speakers, and if you have Nest Aware, this is another reason to look at it with the doorbell. You will have familiar faces, and then you can even get the name of the visitor. Next up, you're going to choose your language. Obviously, this is going to be something for yourself, and here's a look at all of the different languages they have on day one. Now, these are for pre-recorded quick responses when someone's at the door, which you can actually choose from.
Hi there. You can just leave it. Thanks. Just a sec. We'll be right there. Hi there. No one can answer the door right now. We'll be notified you stopped by.
Now we are fully set up. The device is ready to go, and we have a few things to deal with now. First of all, you're going to start getting notifications on your phone, and you can see that they do move those notifications when you get them. You can tap into them and you're instantly into the event and the ability to react to that event or to see all the details. You can actually scroll through, and I'll show you how to use this whole screen in a little bit. But you'll also be getting them on the Nest hubs, and that's because we turned on visitor announcements.
Someone's at the porch doorbell.
Once the feed has come up, you have the ability to talk to the individual, or you can ignore them like I would ignore this guy, and you can give those quick responses by hitting those 3 buttons, and that will let you tell them to go away. You can also ask any Google Assistant enabled smart display to show you the camera or to show you the room that it is sitting in the Google Home app, and once you've done that, you can actually zoom in with your fingers to see the different spots, and of course you can talk through it and tell people things through this speaker. Is anyone listening?
Hello. This is a really good microphone and speaker again. I'm just speaking regularly, pretty far from my phone too. And here's what I yell.
The question of whether Nest Aware is important is a little bit complex, and I'll tell you what the features are here that you'll normally see. There's familiar faces, which will get you notifications on your Nest Hub and on your phone by name. And then there's also the emergency 911 quick dial in the US, and it says both event video history for 30 or 60 days and 24/7 video history. But the Nest Doorbell actually will not record for 24/7. I'll talk to you a little bit in the settings segment about how to get very close to that. But the other big thing is that event video history, because you'll actually only get 3 hours worth of events. And you can see here it's 8:06 and my last event was at 5:06, and now when it's 8:07, that event is gone. That's what they mean by 3 hours of event video history, not a total of 3 hours of event history on their servers. Now that we have our camera fully set up and we're getting notifications, well, it's time to work with the app a little bit, and I'll show you some of the little tricks that I've picked up over the time. You have the cameras button, and this brings up your full list of Nest cameras. You can see I've got quite a few at this point. This is the new battery powered camera. We have a review for that as well, and you can see down here, because the ratio of this doorbell is different, it's taking up more of the screen, at least vertically here. So we can tap in, and because I'm on battery, I have to actually tap live video again. If you were wired in, then it would bring up this feed automatically. It's not based on Nest Aware or anything else like that. Hey, you just saw a car go by, and I'll show you notifications and things like that. And we can see that it's a live feed up here at the top. We can see the battery level, and there's 3 dots here for getting some help and turning off the camera, plus getting to the full history page. But there's also the talk and listen down here, which we can tap. And now anything I'm saying is actually going out to the street and I can listen in. But this feed actually comes up and you can listen into it anyways without that talk and listen on. It's a little different with some of the other cameras. Tapping over to the history tab, you can quickly review the different events. So the little blue bars, those represent different events. So we can scroll back and forth through those, and we can also allow the feed to play. So it's currently playing, and I can pause and play that again. For any of the events, you can go into the details and it will show you some things. Now this is a talk and listen session. So this is me, I press the button, my duration was 19 seconds, but sometimes you'll see some other things on the page here, like if it detected a person or a sound. And the other important thing to note is I can download all of those. So there, now it says download complete, and I've downloaded that to my phone. It's sitting on my phone as a video now. If I'd like to see all of the events that I have recorded, well, here's the full history. Now when you tap on it or you go into it from this point, it filters by the device that you're actually in. So it's filtering by my porch doorbell or your Nest doorbell, and then you can see all of the different events. You can tap in and review any of them. So this is another quick way to get to all of those events. And I want to show you that you can actually get to a full history tab inside of the application. See, down here is your recent events tab, and this is all the different events that have gone on. And then you can go up to the history up here and see the full list of events. So this history is all of the different cameras. It's not just the porch camera anymore. You can see it's the garage camera as well. Back in the main page for my camera, there's a more section down here at the bottom, and it allows me to turn on and off the camera if I'd like to. Plus there's a quiet time button. Now you can set that for different lengths of time if you'd like, up to 3 hours. There's other things that you'll need to do if you don't want this to run in the evenings, and I'll show you that in a bit. There are also the quick responses, and when you tap on that, you're going to get right now what is 3 responses, and I've demoed those here earlier in the video. This is what you can say quickly to people without even using your own voice. The next component is the overall settings, and there are a lot of settings here, but there's some little tricks. Now when you go into device information, it's very simple. There's the name of the device, and if you tap on that, you can actually adjust the name. You can change what room it's in, room, and then you can also change the spoken language. There's also some technical information here. You might be asked by this if you ever need support from Google, and of course there's always the help and feedback buttons at the top right. Notifications starts to bring us a little bit more into getting this thing working better for us. So you know what, you're probably getting some notices as soon as you've got it installed that you don't necessarily want. So push notifications, this will ensure that you're getting any notifications at all. If that's not on, you're not getting any. And if you only want them when you're away, I would understand that. You can turn that on, but it will require presence sensing to be turned on in the app, and you're going to get a notice right there. If you try to turn that on and presence sensing isn't on your phone and in your Google Home app, you'll get told to turn that on. Now the different events that you can get notifications for are right here. So if you only want to know about people and packages, well, then you're set up just like this. If you'd like to know if the cat's going by, you can turn on the cat event or the animals event. And we have another layer to this. So I'm going to draw back here and I'm going to go into events. Then I've got to tap in one more level, and what's happening here is all of the different notifications within the zones is what's being managed here. So the first thing we have to do is add an activity zone. This box comes up, and let's say that I only want to know if there's people who have arrived. Actually, I'm going to go all the way out there, and you know, I don't care if they're on the grass. Now I'm making a box here that my app is going to use. So what's happening here is I've created a zone that this is really where I care about people. So I'm going to hit the check mark, and now that I've created that zone, I can go into zone 1. It's going to show me that zone 1 again, and I can adjust the notifications. So here I am inside of this, and let's say I only want people and packages. I could turn on the animals here as well. That might be fun, but I don't care about motion. I don't care about vehicles. I'm going to close that off. Now I can add additional zones. So let's say that I only want notifications for packages inside of my porch space here. And you could do this differently. I don't even need to do it like this, but let's say this is where you want to know if there are any packages. Well, now you can change it and remove the people, remove all of the other notifications, and you can see that I have a package notification only set here. You can continue to add different zones, and you might need to adjust these over time. You can see that they are able to overlap in many cases. That's okay. You also have this outside of zone. And the outside of zone means exactly what it sounds like. It's going to be outside of these boxes that you've created. So you can see right here, they've given me a gray little outline. This is where things are going on. So I don't care about people outside of those zones, and I don't care about packages, I don't care about animals, and I don't care about vehicles. Now, maybe what you want to do though is to have events of vehicles going by, have them monitored, and you want the people monitored. What you can actually do is turn off the notifications. So this will cause a recording of these events, but not send you a notification. Now, this is starting to get into a little bit of a trick that you can do to have what is essentially 24/7 recording. You're not going to exactly have 24/7 recording, but you can layer those different zones and the different events to start recording earlier. Now, the other section that you will need for this is the video section, and here's what I have done. You want to turn on your 3-hour event history no matter what, or else you're not recording any sort of events at all. Your wake up sensitivity, you'll play with this a little bit, but it's based on the PIR sensor that's on there. I don't think you're going to need to change it in many situations from medium, especially with the zones, but the maximum event length, I would always put this to 3 minutes, because if the doorbell doesn't need 3 minutes, it will stop recording. But that's what it's doing. It's allowing you to record up to 3 minutes continuously on to Google's cloud. There are some other things you might want to go with the max video quality setting here, and you may want to turn on night vision more often, but I would just leave it in auto. Plus there's a status light brightness that you can adjust on the device, probably leaving that at auto. You can see I've been playing with settings. There are a few other settings that we have here. So I'm going to go into battery, and I've turned on the automatic battery saver mode. So when it thinks that there's less than 7 days, it's going to go into a mode that keeps it alive for a little bit longer. Now you'll notice that my battery usage setting has changed to custom. That's because I've set some things in the video and the other sections here. If I go and I change one of these to, or change the setting to default or one of these, it's gonna blow away a lot of the other settings that I've already set up. So I would leave that after you've kind of got things configured in the other sections as you'd like. The next section is doorbell, and right now, because it's a battery configuration, I cannot use the ring indoor chime or the electronic chime. I cannot choose those settings. Otherwise, what I can do is get visitor announcements. So whenever someone rings the doorbell, then my Nest devices will announce that people are here. And we also have the audio segment. This allows you to turn on and off the microphone, the audio recording, and you can change the volume for how loud your voice is going to come through that device. I would just leave it at high. It actually sounds remarkably well, unless you want to make sure your neighbors don't hear you yelling on a video out of your camera like me. There's also the ability to delete your video history and remove the device, which does factory reset the Nest doorbell. So that's really good, actually. One thing that is going to be very important for most of you is in the evenings, do you want all your smart speakers to ring? And you're probably going to want certain ones to and certain ones not to. And the way to manage this, or the best way I think I've managed this, is by going into the settings and then going into notifications and well-being. Then I go into night mode, and right here you can turn on the do not disturb mode or the night mode. Now, night mode will keep it fairly dim and fairly low volume, but turning on do not disturb mode actually would turn off the ability for that smart display or smart speaker to ring. Of course, you might just want to get into the doorbell this way, which you can find through the room in the Google Home application, but it's just taking you back to this screen. So I think using the camera button at the top of the app is actually the easiest. Unfortunately, there's not a lot that I can tell you with routines right now. Within the home and away routines, this camera will show up and it will be able to be turned on or turned off based on what you're doing. I found mine at the bottom of my home and away routines. When I went through the routines, even when I looked for a trigger or an action, I didn't have any of those available on the launch day here, and I even tried to put in a custom command. I could not get my camera to turn off or turn on using a routine. I tried many different things. So unfortunately right now, I don't think that can be done, but go ahead and try it out nowadays. Maybe there's a new feature. Here's a really realistic package delivery, and you can see where that landed, but here's the ability for the Nest Cam to see packages. If it's right up against your home, you're not going to see it, but that is probably about 8 inches away from my door. Now, in terms of seeing people out in the street, yes, it can see people all the way to the street. That's quite a distance from my home, but you can see that it just kind of caught them as they were passing by. Now, I'm all the way out on the street or at the very edge of the street. You really can't make out my face, but I was testing some of the latency and it's less than a second behind real time at all times. Now, here's 500% zoomed in at about 15 feet away, and here's again 500% at about 10 feet away. So you can see that you're starting to be able to make out my face at any given time, and once I get close, it's pretty easy, but a little bit of shadow. It is a little darker on this camera overall, and so you can't always see everything perfectly. It is still very good. Now, a comparison to a Eufy cam. Here's the Eufy cam, what it captured. It's a 2K camera as well, or a 2K video doorbell. You can see the exact same event was captured by both of those, but I like the colors better on the Nest. Now, here's the Eufy cam at 300%. You can't make out my face at all. At the same position, here is the Nest Cam at 300% as well. Now, that's because the Eufy is a 2K cam, but when I get closer in, I still can't make out my face. So neither of these are really winning at this 15 to 20 foot distance. But as we get closer, here's the Eufy cam. I'm not sure I really have any of my features really there unless you count blob features. But the Nest Cam is picking up some of my features. I feel like it's a little bit closer and a little bit better. I also like the colors a lot better here and the way it manages backlighting. Here's me trying to sneak up on the Nest Doorbell and the Eufy 2K video doorbell. You could see the Nest Cam came on first, but we also see it flashing the little doorbell button, and we also see the difference in IR lights. There's quite a few on the Eufy cam. It actually says in the specifications that there are 4 IR lights. Now here's an evening delivery of food that I made just specially for this, and you can see the driver was about 10 to 15 feet away when the Eufy cam picked up. Now here's the event on the Nest Cam. With the Nest Cam, I actually did get the driver driving up, but due to my settings, I'm not keeping those recordings, or I'm not asking for those recordings. So you could get the vehicle driving up with the Nest Cam, but here's what I got just using the zones you saw me setting up. It's exactly the same event, but the difference with the Nest Cam, not only are the colors really good, and he's actually pressing the doorbell in this case, which I have struggled with the Eufy Cam to actually get people to push that button instead of the other doorbell sitting there. So I've been happily surprised by that with the Nest Doorbell. And I've also got this entire event of the person leaving my property. Now here's me sneaking up, and this is when the Eufy 2K doorbell started to record. And here's when the Eufy 2K stopped recording. So it actually eliminated a number of seconds of video there, and then I started walking again and it started to record again. What happened was it stopped recording a second time here as I stopped again. So this Eufy cam you can kind of sneak up on. Its recognition of me is not so good. And again, when we go to the Nest camera, what happens is it sees me coming around the corner. It's done well. To be fair to the test, the Eufy is also providing IR lighting here. So now you can see it. The Eufy cam's IR lights just went off, and this is the actual lighting that you would expect from a Nest cam. But look at how long this event is. This is just one continuous recording. It's got me the whole time when I'm on the property. And obviously you could have different actions going on based on motion sensors and other things going on in your home. So you're going to see the Eufy cam turn off here again, and then you'll see the close up level of IR lighting that comes out of the Nest cam. You can see that it doesn't ever switch over to a regular recording. It leaves it in night mode, and I think this is just based on the type of lighting that is around, and actually it works. So this is the entire singular recording from the Nest Cam. Here's the still. You can see it's quite dark at about 15 to 20 feet away. So those IR lights aren't going to reach really far out, and you're not going to get any sort of resolution on anyone's face. But once they get closer up to you, this is about 6 to 7 feet away, and now I'm 300% zoomed in, and obviously you've got my face pretty well on the screen there, and you can even see what my phone is doing. So that's pretty good to me. But if you'd like to see more comparisons, more security devices for your home, I have a playlist up on screen that will help you to narrow down on what it is you'd like to purchase. Otherwise, thanks for watching today, and of course, don't hate, automate.